I am Ava Redmond, a 31 years old. I own a small flower shop in Charleston, South Carolina, and 3 years ago, my sister sold off every piece of jewelry I inherited from our grandmother worth over $145,000. What I did next? Well, it tore us apart and somehow brought us closer too. The day started quiet. It was a Sunday, the kind of sleepy southern morning where the streets glisten from a night's storm and everything smells like blooming jasmine and wet brick. I had a cup of Earl Grey in one hand, a laundry basket in the other, and nothing heavier on my mind than whether to wear flats or boots for my errands. That changed the moment I opened my closet. My scarf box, labeled in black Sharpie, "Winter Only," sat on the top shelf like it always had. I reached up, standing on tiptoes, pulling it down gently, feeling its weight like muscle memory. But this time it was too light. My heart dipped, but I told myself it was just in my head. Maybe I had moved it, cleaned it out during a New Year purge, maybe. I flipped off the lid and stared. The velvet box was gone. Gone. I blinked, waiting for the missing object to magically appear like it had only slipped under a scarf or corner of tissue paper. But the space was empty. Gutted. I stood frozen, the open box in my hands, breathing shallowly. The white noise of the ceiling fan above seemed louder suddenly, like it was trying to fill the space where shock now lived. That velvet case had held everything that mattered, my grandmother's most treasured jewelry. Not just family heirlooms, but pieces I knew down to the tiny scratches and imperfect clasps. The pieces she had told me stories about since I was a little girl. Her diamond earrings, the ones she wore only on Christmas. The ruby pendant that had been her mother's, passed down from woman to woman since 1893. Her wedding ring, still etched with the initials of a man long gone. A brooch in deep blue sapphire, cracked slightly on the left curve from when she dropped it on the day of her husband's funeral. And the pearls. The soft, warm strand of pearls she always said I'd wear on my wedding day. Every piece gone. The taste of tea in my mouth soured. My legs gave out and I sat on the edge of the bed, the box still open on my lap, as if looking at the absence long enough might undo it. But nothing changed. I whispered her name under my breath, Nana. The grief hit me like a second wave, deeper, crueler than the one when she died, because this wasn't death, this was theft, and worse, betrayal. I picked up my phone and called the only other person who'd ever known where I kept it. Carly. She answered on the second ring, bubbly, too cheerful for what I was about to ask. Hey sunshine, she chirped, how's the plant queen this morning? Carly, I said flatly, my voice already trembling, did you take grandma's jewelry? The silence was instant. Then came the laugh, high-pitched, nervous, like a balloon slowly losing air. Wah, what are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, the velvet case, the scarf box, the closet in my bedroom. Ava, come on, you're scaring me. Carly, I said slowly, coldly, just tell me the truth, did you take it? Her breath hitched. And then she hung up. My body went cold. I stared at the phone screen, her name still lit up in blue, heart hammering in my chest like a war drum. I already knew. I already knew. I drove to her apartment that night. I don't remember changing clothes or grabbing my keys. I just remember rage, white-hot and shaking through my spine. My hands were stiff on the steering wheel, knuckles bone-white. I didn't blast music or cry. I drove in silence, in fury. Her building was the same, peeling yellow paint, one porch light flickering, her beat-up Civic parked crooked as always. I banged on the door with the flat of my hand. She opened it in sweats and a messy bun. No makeup, no excuses. I sold it, she said. Just like that. No denial, no drama, just the truth landing between us like a dropped match on dry wood. I needed the monies. The slap came before I knew I had raised my hand. It echoed sharp and final. Her face turned with it, not in pain but in understanding. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. I was going to pay you back, she whispered. I didn't think you'd find out this soon. You were going to hope I didn't find out, I said. You stole from her, not just me, from her, from what she trusted me to protect. Tears pricked her eyes, but I turned and walked away before they could fall. That night I boxed every photograph of us, from childhood birthdays to beach vacations to blurry Halloween costumes. I dumped them into a storage bin and shoved it into my closet. I changed the lock code to my apartment. I blocked her number. And then I sat on the floor and cried. For hours. Grief poured out of me in waves. Rage, confusion, sorrow that my sister, the girl I built blanket forts with, had turned into someone I couldn't look in the eye. Weeks passed. I buried myself in the flower shop, arranging peonies and eucalyptus into soft metaphors for the parts of me that were breaking. I smiled for customers and avoided questions about family. Then one night while cleaning, I found something. A consignment receipt. Tucked in the bottom of an old canvas tote bag I hadn't used since before the betrayal. Carmela's fine consignment. King Street, Charleston. My hands went cold. The next morning I walked through its glass doors. The boutique smelled like lavender and expensive perfume. A woman with silver curls greeted me with a smile. I showed her the receipt. She typed into a computer, then looked up. Most of the pieces are gone, sold, but one remained. She opened a velvet-lined drawer and pulled it out. The brooch. Sapphire blue, cracked on the edge, just like I remembered. My grandmother's grief brooch, her wedding funeral brooch, the one she wore when she held my hand after Mom left, the one I begged to borrow for prom but never had the courage to. It cost me $4,300 to buy back. I didn't hesitate. I stepped into the rain outside and held it in my palm. My tears mixed with the drizzle. I looked up at the boutique sign, Carmela. My grandmother's name. That night I opened a sketchbook. I hadn't drawn since high school, but my fingers moved like they'd never stopped. I sketched a storefront, soft lighting, gold accents, velvet shelves, a sign over the door. Carly's. Not out of forgiveness, but out of rage, love, and reclamation. If my sister had taken everything in my grandmother's name, I would build something just as big in hers. Only this time I would be in control. And that's how it began. How healing started as revenge and grew into something I never expected. And that's how it began. How healing started as revenge and grew into something I never expected. I opened the boutique 6 months later. It was small, just 900 square feet, tucked between a used bookstore and a tea lounge on Bay Street. But it had exposed brick, original hardwood floors, and a wide bay window that flooded everything in soft morning light. I painted the walls a warm shade of cream, lined the racks with vintage lace, brocade, and silk. Every hanger matched. Every tag was handwritten. Every piece of inventory had a backstory. And right near the register, encased in glass, sat the one item I never priced. The sapphire brooch. Her brooch. It rested on navy velvet, a small engraved plaque underneath. In memory of Carmela Redmond, some heirlooms cannot be sold, only carried. Opening day was a blur. Women filtered in, drawn by the gold-lettered sign out front. Carly's Vintage Revival. They asked who the shop was named after. I told them my sister. That was all. I didn't say she had betrayed me. I didn't say she had stolen my grandmother's legacy, or that I hadn't spoken to her since the day I walked away from her door. But the truth, I thought about her every day. The silence between us was a cold companion, constant and biting. Even surrounded by velvet and chandeliers and old music humming through the shop, she was always there in the corner of my memory, standing barefoot in the apartment doorway, whispering, "I didn't think you'd find out." So when she walked through the boutique door 3 days after I opened it, my breath caught. She looked thinner, her jeans hung looser on her hips. Her cheeks were bare, no mascara, no earrings. Her eyes scanned the room like she wasn't sure if she had permission to be there. I stepped out from behind the counter, my spine straightened instinctively. Carly stopped in front of the glass case, her eyes locked on the brooch, her lips parted slightly. "I thought you sold it," she said quietly. "I bought it back," I replied. Her eyes filled, she nodded, swallowing. And then she saw the sign on the wall behind me. Carly's. Her jaw twitched, she looked at me confused. "You named it after me?" "Yes." Her voice dropped. "Why?" I hesitated, my hands folded tightly over my stomach, holding myself in. "Because I needed to put your name somewhere I could stand to see it every day," I said. "I needed to take the shame off it." to make something right again, even if it was you. She blinked. I want to work here, she said, barely above a whisper. The air in the shop felt thick. I laughed softly. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't warm. You think you can just walk in and put on an apron? No, she said quickly. I don't want anything, not a cut, not a title. I need to prove I'm still someone who can build, not just someone who breaks. There was something raw in her voice, and real. So I said nothing. I reached behind the counter, pulled out the spare apron, and handed it to her. You start tomorrow, unpaid for the first week. She nodded, fair. And just like that, we began again. If healing had a temperature, ours was just above freezing. We didn't talk much that first week. She came in on time, folded clothes, learned the register, polished mirrors. She didn't speak unless spoken to, didn't touch the brooch case, didn't even look me in the eye if she didn't have to. But she showed up. Every day. Even when I came in early, she was already there, sweeping the floor, lighting the candles we used for scent, setting up the window display. There was a silence to her presence, but it didn't feel hollow. It felt penitential, like she was trying to rebuild something sacred with her hands. On the 8th day, she brought in pastries. I know you skip breakfast, she said, setting a box of still warm danishes on the counter. I don't, I replied. She smiled, you do. I didn't argue. I ate one. By the second week, the customers started to notice her. They loved her. She had always had that kind of energy, magnetic, a little chaotic but warm. When she helped a woman find the perfect 1940s swing coat, she did it like it mattered. When she wrapped a purchase, she added a lavender sachet without asking. When a little girl wandered in with her mother and pointed to the mannequin in the window, Carly knelt and said, "One day you'll be taller than her." I watched it all. I wanted to resent it. But mostly, I felt relief. One Friday night, after closing, we sat together in the back room for the first time, 2 mugs of tea between us, the boutique bathed in the soft orange glow of the Edison bulbs overhead. Carly cleared her throat. I didn't sell it all at once, she said. I looked at her. The jewelry, she clarified. It wasn't a one-time thing, it was over months, little by little. I told myself I'd stop when I paid off my credit card, then when I caught up on rent, then when I could buy groceries without overdrafting. She looked down at her mug. Every time I handed a piece over the counter, it felt like I was losing a part of her. And you, and me, but I couldn't stop. Tears clung to the rim of her lashes. I thought you were too perfect, that maybe you didn't need it the way I did. I swallowed hard. I needed you, I said. Not the jewelry, I would have sold it myself if you just told me, if you'd come to me. I couldn't, she whispered. I didn't think you'd see me as anything but a thief. I said nothing. Instead, I reached into the drawer and pulled out an old photo. It was the 3 of us, me, Carly, and Grandma, sitting on the porch swing at the lake house. Carly had her arms around my neck like a monkey, laughing. I was mid-eye roll. Grandma was grinning wide, her eyes crinkled in pure joy. I slid it across the table. We were good once, I said. We still can be, she replied. And that was the first time we both cried. Together. That night, I locked up the boutique not as a solo shop owner, but as someone no longer alone. The journey wasn't over, there was more to forgive, more to heal. But for the first time in years, I believed in the possibility. We were sisters. And we were starting again. But starting again doesn't mean starting clean. It just means trying, knowing the mess is still there, knowing the ghosts still hover just outside the walls you're rebuilding. By the end of our 3rd month working together, Carly had become a fixture in the boutique. Customers asked for her by name. Regulars brought her coffee. She started designing her own display corners, repurposed lace gloves arranged like butterflies, antique mirrors surrounded by pressed flowers. I didn't stop her. I watched her with a quiet pride I didn't know I was allowed to feel yet. But then came her. The woman with the designer tote and the sharp red lipstick. She entered the boutique like someone who already owned the air inside it, cool, calculated, and completely at ease. I was at the front counter, pricing a newly acquired 1930s silk shawl when I saw her reflection in the glass. Carly noticed her too. She stiffened, the kind of involuntary flinch you give when a name you buried in the past suddenly says hello again. I turned around. The woman approached slowly, scanning the shop with eyes that didn't linger. They measured. Ava Redmond, she said, offering a hand. It's been some time. Her voice was smooth, effortless, the kind of voice that only comes from years of high-rise conference rooms and country club martinis. It took me a second, but I placed her. Olivia Crane, my grandmother's former estate attorney. She was the one who handled the reading of the will. I remembered her perfectly pressed suit and the scent of something expensive I couldn't pronounce. She had handed me the paperwork with the same expression people use when passing a napkin at a funeral. Now she was standing in the boutique that bore my sister's name, and something in her smile made my stomach turn. "What brings you here?" I asked, not shaking her hand. "Oh, curiosity, I was passing through Charleston and thought I'd stop by," she said, glancing around. "I've heard quite the story." I said nothing. She walked over to the glass case, eyes landing on the brooch. Carly moved closer instinctively, like she needed to protect it with her body. Olivia smiled faintly. "You've created something beautiful here," she said, "very public." "Everything we sell is authentic," I said calmly. "That includes the story." "I'm not here to challenge your truth," she replied. "I'm here to remind you that others have their own." She turned to Carly. "You must be the artist now." Carly met her gaze. "I'm the sister now." That made Olivia's lip twitch, not quite a smile, not quite a smirk. "Do you know what something like this is worth in a probate lawsuit?" she asked, waving vaguely at the display. Carly blinked. "It's not for sale." Olivia stepped closer, voice softening. "I've been contacted by an heir in Atlanta, a buyer who recently acquired a vintage necklace traced back to this estate. She's worried she might have been involved in a wrongful transaction. She's considering legal action." The air shifted. I stepped forward, arms crossed. The jewelry was sold by a family member. It wasn't stolen, and if someone wants to sue over a mistake they were part of, let them. "I'm not threatening," Olivia said. "I'm offering foresight, because if this becomes a media story, if buyers start digging, you'll find that vintage doesn't just come with character, it comes with baggage." She looked at Carly again. "And yours is heavier than most." "Get out," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked back to mine. "I hope for your sake this pretty little kingdom holds," she said. "But if it doesn't, don't say I didn't knock first." She turned and walked out, heels clicking across the floor like punctuation marks. We stood in silence for several seconds after the bell above the door jingled. Carly exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since the moment Olivia entered. "She's bluffing," she said, "right?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wasn't sure anymore. That night I found myself in the back office staring at the boutique's ledger. The sales, the returns, the inventory breakdowns, every detail accounted for, every price tagged and signed. But no amount of precision could protect us from the past if it wanted to rip through our seams. Carly knocked gently on the doorframe. "Can I come in?" I nodded. She sat across from me, fidgeting with the bracelet on her wrist, one she had made from melted scraps of her old mistakes. "I didn't just take the jewelry," she said softly. "I lied about what I did with it. I didn't sell everything to one shop. I went to multiple. Some pieces I mailed, some I gave to friends to pawn." I closed my eyes, breathing through the sting. "I should have told you earlier," she whispered. "You're telling me now," I said. She looked up. "You're not mad." "I'm exhausted," I admitted, "but I'd rather be exhausted by the truth than betrayed by another lie." We sat in silence. Finally, I asked, "Do you remember who you mailed that necklace to?" She nodded slowly. "A woman named Melissa. She was an antique buyer in Atlanta. She paid through PayPal." "Still have her info." Carly stood, walked to the filing cabinet, and returned with a worn yellow notepad. She handed it to me. "It's all here." I looked at the name, the address, the date. We had a paper trail. We had a chance. And that's when I realized Olivia hadn't come to threaten us. She had come to warn us. Because someone was already on their way. Someone who didn't care about our healing. Only the cracks. The next morning, Carly and I began contacting every buyer we had record of. Some ignored us. Some sympathized. But one, Melissa Carter of Atlanta, replied within the hour. Subject line, "I think I have something that belongs to you." She attached a photo of the necklace, my grandmother's ruby lariat, unmistakable even through the grain of the image. She wrote, "It never felt like mine. I've worn it twice and both times something about it felt heavy. I found your story through a blog repost. I'd like to return it if you'll let me." Carly cried when I showed her the email. Not softly, but fully. The kind of tears that crack through walls and pull things into the light. She looked at me with trembling eyes. "I don't deserve it back." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached for her hand. "We don't always get what we deserve," I said. "Sometimes we get what we're strong enough to carry again." And when the necklace arrived 5 days later, wrapped in silk, its ruby catching the light like a beating heart, we didn't put it in the safe. We put it in the front display, right beside the sapphire brooch. A plaque between them read, "Recovered, not redeemed, but remembered." Because what Olivia didn't understand, and what Martin never would, is that legacy isn't about what survives untouched. It's about what returns after being broken. What is chosen again? What is loved anyway? We placed the ruby necklace in the front display under soft white lights, next to the sapphire brooch. The two heirlooms looked like old friends reunited after a long war, battered but beautiful, still humming with the memory of the women who once wore them. People stopped and stared. Some asked for the price. I told them gently, "These aren't for sale, they came back to us, and that's worth more than anything we could charge." A week passed. Then two. Life inside the boutique settled again like fresh powder snow covering old footprints. Carly smiled more. She began working on her new jewelry line, Second Skin, reclaimed by fire, pieces melted and reforged from broken or forgot materials. Her confidence was changing, no longer fragile. It was rooted now, quiet but present, the kind that isn't loud but lives in the room. And then, just before closing one rainy Thursday afternoon, the bell over the door chimed. I looked up from the counter and saw her. She was tall, elegant, early 50s maybe, wearing a camel-colored trench coat and heels that looked more like weapons than shoes. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight twist, and a soft glint of gold peeked through the edge of her collarbone. My breath hitched. The necklace. The ruby lariat, my grandmother's necklace. Not a duplicate, not a replica, the real thing, unmistakable in its pattern of tiny imperfections. The left side clasp slightly bent, the center ruby deeper in hue than the rest. I'd memorized every detail the way a child memorizes a lullaby they're afraid to forget. Carly froze beside me. The woman looked around the boutique with calm eyes, scanning every corner. She stopped in front of the display case, staring down at the brooch. Then she turned to us. "I believe," she said, her voice gentle but assured, "I have something that doesn't belong to me." She removed the necklace from around her neck with delicate hands and placed it into a silk pouch. Then she rested it on the glass display like an offering. "I bought it about 6 months ago," she continued. "At the time, I didn't ask many questions. I saw it. I wanted it. I had just finalized a divorce. I was trying to become someone new, I think." She smiled, sad but not broken. "But every time I wore it, it didn't feel like it belonged. It didn't sit right. It felt like I was wearing someone else's heartbeat." Carly's hand clutched the counter. She didn't say a word. The woman continued, "And then I read your story. I saw the picture of the brooch, the boutique name. I remembered the PayPal note. It had said Redmond Jewelry. I knew it wasn't mine to keep." I took the pouch with trembling hands. The silk felt warm, as if it had absorbed some piece of her, or perhaps some piece of my grandmother that never really left. "Thank you," I whispered. She shook her head. "No need, the necklace just came home." Before I could ask her name, she smiled once more, touched the display glass one last time, and walked out into the rain, no umbrella, no hesitation, just gone. Carly turned to me, her eyes red, her jaw trembling. "That's the first one I sold," she whispered. "The first. It felt the easiest to part with because it meant the least to me, but it didn't. It was just the one I was least afraid to lose. I placed the pouch down gently, unwrapped it, and laid the necklace out beside the brooch. The ruby glinted under the warm light like it was sighing, like it had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. We stood in silence. Not mourning this time, but something closer to awe. That evening, after closing, we brewed a pot of peppermint tea and sat on the boutique floor barefoot, surrounded by old receipts, velvet hangers, and bits of satin ribbon. The rain tapped against the windows like a lullaby. I pulled out Grandma's cedar journal, the one we kept hidden in the office safe. We hadn't opened it in weeks. "Do you want to read?" I asked Carly. She shook her head. "You should," she said. "It always felt more like it belonged to you." So I did. I flipped through the entries past the stories we'd already read, of grief, of laughter, of mistakes she never confessed to anyone else. Toward the back, her handwriting grew shakier, more urgent. One line caught me. "When things are returned, it's not about the object. It's about the moment someone decides to be good again." I read it out loud. Carly nodded slowly. "I want to be good again," she whispered, "but sometimes I still feel like a stranger inside myself." I reached for her hand. "You're not a stranger, you're just in the middle of remembering who you were before everything cracked." She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Do you remember who I was?" I smiled. "Yeah, I do. The girl who could make anyone laugh, who cried at commercials, who wore glitter lip gloss to high school even when it got her teased, who once defended me in front of a group of 8th grade boys by dumping a carton of milk on their leader's head." She was still in there. And I was watching her claw her way back, not with grand gestures but in small, deliberate ways. A thank you note to a customer, a redesigned window display with tiny feathers woven between scarves, an apology left in a box addressed to me, full of old receipts, and a note that read, "In case we ever need to undo more damage." We were healing. Not quickly, not easily, but honestly. By the end of the month, the necklace had become a symbol. Customers touched the glass reverently like it might pass strength through their skin. Women cried in front of it. One even left a note behind that read, "I haven't spoken to my sister in 4 years. I think I'm going to call her today." That note lives in our cash drawer now, folded, soft around the edges. A quiet reminder that the things we think are lost sometimes circle back when we least expect them. But just as we began to feel that safety again, that fragile, warm sense of peace, a new envelope arrived. Plain gray, no return address. Typed. No postage. It had been slid under the front door sometime between 6 p.m. and 8. Inside. "Blood may bind, but it also blinds. You don't know what she really sold." That night, I found Carly staring into the display case long after we'd closed. The necklace, the brooch, the tiny plaque beneath them that simply read, "Recovered, remembered, not for sale." I didn't ask what she was thinking. She turned to me. "There's something I haven't told you," she said softly. My stomach twisted. "What is it?" She hesitated, then said, "I think there's one more piece, one I never admitted to selling." "What piece?" Carly's voice dropped. "The ring." My chest went still. "Grandma's wedding ring." She nodded. "I thought I lost it in the move, but I didn't. I sold it to a private buyer, cash, no paper trail." "And you don't know who?" "No," she whispered, "but I think they know us now." The lights above us flickered slightly, and outside the rain turned to wind. The story wasn't done with us yet. Not even close. For every item we recovered, it felt like another thread came loose in the fabric of our lives, threads we didn't even know were there. Carly's confession about Grandma's wedding ring haunted us both. The idea of that simple gold band, the one I remembered catching sunlight when Grandma reached for a teacup, resting on the neck of a stranger or stuffed in a pawn shop drawer somewhere, made me ache. But we couldn't stop. Because something else had started moving beneath the surface. The boutique was changing. Not physically, the brick, the velvet, the soft jazz, and curated lighting all remained, but emotionally, spiritually. It had become a place people came to not just to shop, but to confess. A woman cried in the dressing room one afternoon, clutching a 1950s beaded jacket that looked exactly like one her mother wore in a wedding photo. Another brought in a brooch she'd found in a drawer during her divorce and said, "I think it belongs to someone braver than me." And at the center of it all was Carly. She was no longer just an assistant, or even my sister. She was becoming something else, something solid, something earned. An artist. Her collection, Second Skin, was growing. What started as 6 pieces handcrafted from discarded scraps had now evolved into a full line of reclaimed beauty. Broken lockets, twisted metal, torn silk cords. She soldered, shaped, strung, and stitched until they weren't just jewelry, they were survival stories. Each came with a note, handwritten in her careful, slanted script. Forgiveness isn't a finish line, it's a thread that pulls you forward, one loop at a time. We displayed the collection in the bay window with gold lights framing each piece like altar offerings. Within days, people started ordering from other states. Women sent in their own broken items, hoping Carly could make them whole again. And she did. One by one. But as her line grew, so did the shadows. It started small. We found the front doormat soaked in what looked like motor oil. Then a vase on the porch shattered even though there had been no wind that day. The glass shards weren't scattered like a fall. They were gathered in a neat little circle, deliberate, almost symbolic. Then the note started again. Gray envelopes always typed, no return address. The first one read, "Not everything you fix stays fixed." The second, "Some legacies should stay buried, you're digging up ghosts." And then a third, "You stole what she never wanted returned." I didn't show the last one to Carly. I slipped it into the safe, heart pounding. But Carly already knew. She felt it in the way the boutique lights flickered late at night, in the hum behind the walls, in the way she sometimes found the jewelry display moved ever so slightly, like someone had touched it while we were gone. One night, I walked into the back room and found her sitting on the floor in front of her workbench, arms wrapped around her knees. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "I feel like I'm being hunted," she said. "You're not," I replied, even though I wasn't sure. She shook her head. "You don't get it. It's not just what I did, it's who I became when I did it. I keep wondering if I invited this. Like, maybe someone watched me fall apart and decided I deserved to keep falling." I knelt beside her. "You were in survival mode, you made horrible choices, but you came back." Her voice cracked. "What if that's not enough?" "It has to be," I said, softer now, "because we don't get to control the people who want to haunt us. We only get to choose what we build in spite of them." Carly rested her head against my shoulder. For a moment, it felt like we were back in the twin bed at Grandma's lake house, whispering stories after midnight, swearing we'd always be close, no matter what. We believed it then. Maybe we could believe it again. That weekend, we hosted our first official Second Skin workshop. We cleared the boutique after hours, pulled in stools and velvet cushions, and opened the doors to 8 women who brought their own pieces to reimagine. A rusted brooch that belonged to an estranged aunt. A baby spoon engraved with initials that no one in the family remembered. A cracked ring that once belonged to someone's mother's best friend, found in a drawer after she passed. Carly led them gently, guiding each woman through the process of melting, mending, threading. There were no mirrors in the room, just candlelight and slow music. Every so often, someone would cry. No one asked them why. By the end of the night, every woman left with something reborn, not just in their hands, but in their hearts. We cleaned in silence after they left. I watched Carly move through the space like it was sacred. "Do you realize what you're doing here?" I asked. She shrugged, brushing crumbs off the table. "You're giving people a reason to believe broken things still have value." She paused. Then she whispered, "I'm just trying to make up for what I took." "No," I said, "you're building something beyond that." And I meant it. For the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't just forgiving her. I was proud of her. But pride, like peace, is fragile. And the next morning, the necklace was gone. We opened the boutique at 9 a.m. sharp like always. The alarm hadn't tripped. The cameras showed nothing unusual. But the display case, unlocked, unbroken, empty. The ruby necklace, Grandma's necklace, was gone. Carly sank to the floor, pale. "I locked it last night," she said. "I believe you." We called the police, filed a report, pulled the camera footage again. Nothing, no movement, no break-in. It was like it had vanished into thin air. But there was one thing. Another note. Taped under the glass where the necklace had rested. Typed. Simple. Some things are meant to stay gone. Carly sat in the back office the rest of the day, unable to speak. I managed the boutique alone, smiling through questions I couldn't answer. But inside, something inside me shifted. I was done being afraid. Someone wanted us to believe that what we were doing was wrong, that rebuilding was arrogance, that healing was theft. But they were wrong. What we were doing, reclaiming love, memory, forgiveness, was sacred. So that night, I went into the back room. I placed the remaining heirlooms in the new case Carly had designed. Tall glass, gold base, lock reinforced. I added a new placard. Recovered, rebuilt, protected. And then I added something else. An empty silk pouch. Pinned beside it. Missing but not forgotten. If you're carrying what isn't yours, you know where to return it. We didn't speak of the necklace again that week. But something had shifted in Carly. She worked with more fire. More purpose. She didn't stop creating. She dared the shadows to try again. Because she was no longer a thief trying to atone. She was a survivor turning grief into gold. And I was her witness. Her sister. Her fiercest believer. Even in the dark. That's where the truth had been waiting. After the necklace vanished, everything shifted again. The boutique still smelled of dried lavender and candle wax, the same Ella Fitzgerald records still played, and the customers still smiled as they walked through the door, but something under the floorboards of our piece had cracked open. And one quiet Tuesday, the crack split all the way through. It started with cleaning. Just a routine backroom clean-out, clearing space for Carly's new soldering table. The storage closet had always been a mess of tangled coat hangers, unused displays, and old shipping boxes we never threw away. But that day, I reached into the back corner behind a set of wire shelves and pulled out a cedar box. I recognized it instantly. Grandma. Square, polished, smelling faintly of lilac and old perfume. I hadn't seen it since her funeral. Carly and I thought it had gone to a cousin in Virginia, lost in the shuffle of who took what. But now here it was, sitting quietly in the shadows like it had been waiting. Carly stepped in behind me, saw it in my hands, and froze. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "In the closet, buried behind the wire shelf." She didn't move. I could see her throat bob with a swallow. Together, we brought the box to the center table, sat down on either side, and lifted the lid. Inside, tissue-wrapped fabric, brittle from time, 2 silk scarves, a silver lipstick tube with dried residue on the cap, a Polaroid of Grandma standing between 2 unfamiliar women. And beneath it all a journal. Brown leather handbound, slightly cracked along the spine. Her handwriting on the inside cover, delicate and steady. If they find this, it means I ran out of time. I looked up at Carly. She didn't speak. We opened it together. The journal wasn't like the others we'd seen. This one wasn't filled with memories or recipes. It was a map. Every page contained details, names, addresses, pieces of jewelry, what year they were passed down, who inherited them, and more importantly, who tried to take them. Aunts, cousins, in-laws, a long list of people who had, in Grandma's words, looked at memory and only seen money. She detailed betrayals with heartbreaking clarity, including one we didn't expect. Martin petitioned to revoke the second will in April 2019, claimed I was declining. Evelyn said he was building a case. Isla told me to burn it. I refused. "Isla," I said aloud. Carly blinked. "Who, Isla?" "Keep reading," I murmured. Another entry. Isla Brentwood, once my maid, later Martin's spy. When she returned in 18 pretending to help me reorganize the estate, I knew. She always asked about the trunk, the necklace, the journal. I looked at Carly. She looked pale. "She was in the house," Carly whispered. "Before Grandma died, I remember, I thought she was just another hospice worker. We turned another page, and there, taped neatly, was a key. Tiny bronze with the initials LB etched into the top. No note, no instructions. Just one final entry scrawled beneath it. If anything happens, if they come, this key unlocks what they want, but you get to decide if it should ever be found. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of legacy pressing down on both of us like a ceiling too low. What do we do with this? Carly whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know. That night, after we locked the boutique and dimmed the lights, we sat on the floor in the front room with the journal between us and a single candle burning in the window. Outside, Charleston breathed its sleepy humidity against the glass. Inside, we held history in our laps. What if we don't look? Carly asked. What if we destroy it? What if it's the only way to protect ourselves? I countered. What if this is the evidence they're waiting for? We argued, quietly but with heat. She said legacy was too heavy to carry. I said it was too dangerous to abandon. Then she said something I'll never forget. I spent a year trying to bury what I did to you. Now I'm finally strong enough to face it. Don't ask me to run again. So we made a plan. We would find what the key opened. But we wouldn't do it alone. We called Evelyn. Evelyn McCree hadn't answered her phone in weeks. She had always been the quiet steward behind Grandma's legal affairs, the one who hid in the shadows while Olivia played puppet. She had warned us about Martin, about Isla. She had told us the legacy was more than heirlooms. But now she was gone. We drove to her address the next morning, a quiet retirement community 30 minutes outside the city. An aide met us at the front. Miss McCree passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 weeks ago, she said. She left something for you. She handed me a sealed envelope with both our names. Back at the boutique, we opened it together. Inside, a photograph of a trunk. And a note. The lake house attic under the quilt, you'll know it when you see it. The key fits, use it wisely. My heart caught in my throat. The lake house, where Grandma had taken us every summer, where we spent hours on the dock, peeling sunburns and singing Spice Girls under the stars. The lake house had been sold after she passed. We hadn't been back since. But the trunk was still there. 2 days later, the new owners let us in. A kind older couple, both artists, happy to honor our request. We never touched the attic, the woman said, too many spider webs. We climbed the creaking stairs, flashlight in hand, heart pounding like we were opening a tomb. And there it was. A narrow wooden trunk tucked beneath a moth-eaten quilt. We dragged it into the light. The lock bore the same initials, LB. I pulled the key from my pocket. Carly looked at me, breathing hard. Ready, she whispered. I nodded. I turned the key. The trunk opened with a soft groan, the scent of cedar and thyme rising into the dusty air like memory. Inside, a sealed manila envelope marked, "Do not open unless forced." A zippered cloth pouch. A stack of photos. And at the bottom, wrapped in soft yellowing tissue, a ring box. My fingers trembled as I lifted it out. I opened it. Grandma's wedding ring. Whole untouched. Returned without us ever knowing. Carly gasped beside me, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I sold it, she choked. I remember selling it. You didn't, I whispered. You never let it go. The gold caught the light like a promise. We sat in the attic for a long time, surrounded by shadows, holding a ring we thought was lost, and a journal that had guided us through more than just history. It had brought us home. Back at the boutique, we added the ring to the heirloom display in a new box with a new card. Some things stay because they choose to. Carly placed a small velvet ribbon beside it, one she used on her first ever sale. And that night we lit candles. Not in mourning. Not in fear. But in honor. Of Grandma. Of Evelyn. Of all the women before us who buried things to protect them. And all the women after us who would dig them up and carry them forward. And all the women after us who would dig them up and carry them forward. That was the idea anyway, that we'd broken the cycle, that we'd laid our ghosts to rest and finally locked the door behind them. But you don't get to choose when the past is done with you. And sometimes the door you close quietly, someone else kicks open. The day it started, I was rearranging the front display. A new batch of vintage evening clutches had arrived, and I was lining them up by color: pearl, pewter, garnet, midnight blue. It was a slow afternoon. Carly was in the back room soldering new charms for her next second skin line, tiny lockets made from melted brooch backs and fractured barrettes. The shop smelled like amber wax and metal shavings. Everything felt good. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe we had reached the calm after the storm. Then the letter came. No postage, no return address. Just a gray envelope folded so precisely it could have been cut by blade. Slipped under the boutique door between 2:00 and 2:15 p.m. I know that because I had stepped out to grab coffee and it hadn't been there when I left. Inside, only one line. There are things your grandmother didn't want found. It wasn't signed. It wasn't dated. But it was typed on the same antique typewriter font as the others. I showed it to Carly that evening. She didn't say anything, just sat down hard on the stool behind the register and stared at it like it might start whispering. I thought we were past this, she said finally. We are, I replied, forcing strength into my voice, but someone is. We tried to shake it off, but the next day another letter arrived. This time it read, "She trusted the wrong sister." That one hit like a bullet. Carly read it, didn't cry, didn't flinch. She folded it carefully, tucked it into the back pocket of her jeans, and went right back to hammering a new pendant. That night I heard her sob through the bathroom wall. I didn't knock. I waited on the couch until she came out, red-eyed but walking tall. "Let's make them louder than the letters," she said. I knew what she meant. We'd been silent for too long. The next week, we launched a display called the Return Case. We filled it with every heirloom that had made its way back to us. The brooch, the ring, the lariat necklace, the cracked cufflink turned earring, and one of Carly's original pieces made entirely from melted junk. In front of the display, we placed a brass box. No lock, no key. Just a plaque. If something has been weighing on you, return it. Anonymity honored, healing welcomed. And they did. Over the next 2 weeks we received a necklace Carly had sold to a vendor in Savannah, returned by a woman who bought it at a flea market. A silver charm bracelet mailed anonymously from Atlanta. A Victorian button ring that had once been part of our family set, dropped quietly into the box with no note, no name. Each time we documented the item, added it to the display, and updated the sign. Recovered 7, lost 2, awaiting unknown. But with every return came another letter. Always typed. Always cruel. You are not her daughters, you are thieves dressed as curators. She would have burned the trunk herself if she knew what you'd become. One of you will betray the other, it's just a matter of time. We gave the letters to the police. They did nothing. No fingerprints, no known threats, stay vigilant. So we installed more cameras, added motion lights, changed locks. We moved the trunk from the back office to a climate-controlled storage unit. But still we felt watched. I started waking up at 3:14 a.m. every morning, every night the same time. Heart racing. Like someone had whispered my name just seconds before I opened my eyes. And then she came. A Tuesday, late afternoon, golden light slanting through the windows, a few customers browsing. The bell rang. I looked up. And I knew. It was her. I didn't know her name, I didn't recognize her face because she didn't have one. At least not one you could trust. She was plain, so painfully average it felt intentional. Brown coat, gray scarf, no makeup, no jewelry, no identifying features, like a person built out of blank pages. But when her eyes met mine, I knew. Carly appeared at my side, I hadn't heard her come from the back. The woman approached slowly, no smile. She stopped in front of the display case, looked down at the ring. And then she spoke. Your grandmother asked me to destroy that ring. Carly sucked in a breath. I didn't move. I was with her the night before she passed, the woman continued. She changed her mind, she said she didn't want you two to carry what came with it. Her voice was soft, icy. I told her I'd burn it, she made me promise. Who are you? I asked. Someone who keeps her word. Then why are you here? Because you didn't let it burn. Her fingers tapped the glass once, twice. You opened what was meant to stay locked, you read what was never meant for you, and now others are interested. What others? She smiled barely. Legacies attract more than family, Ms. Redmond. They attract hunters, and you've left a trail. She slid something across the counter. Another gray envelope. This one heavier. Then she turned and walked out. We didn't move until the door shut behind her. I picked up the envelope. Inside, a flash drive. And a note. Play it alone. That night Carly and I sat in the office. We locked the boutique, turned off the lights. I plugged the drive into my laptop. One video file. We hit play. It was security footage. Grainy. Timestamp 2 weeks earlier. The boutique, midnight. The brooch case. And a figure in the dark. No face, no sound, just gloved hands picking the lock with ease, lifting the necklace, closing the case again. Clean. Effortless. Then as the figure turned, the light caught something. A tattoo. Right wrist. 3 lines. Vertical, burned into the skin. Carly's voice cracked. I know that mark. What is it? It's from an old safe house. Grandma sent me there once the summer after Mom left. I never told you. Evelyn was there, so was Isla. Everyone had that mark carved into a metal medallion. 3 lines, past, present, protect. Like a code. Like a covenant. The figure vanished through the back door. Clean, fast. And gone. The next morning, the brass return box was gone. No break-in. No alarm. Just missing. And in its place, a velvet pouch. Inside, a single antique key. And a note. You've opened the first door. Now decide if you're ready for the second. Carly stared at it. I stared at her. And we both knew. This wasn't a robbery. This was a summons. Thank you. Here is the next full cinematic continuation. Part 8, The House Behind the House. Full cinematic script, 2,000 plus words. Continues seamlessly from Part 7's final line. This wasn't a robbery, this was a summons. This wasn't a robbery. This was a summons. The velvet pouch lay between us on the boutique counter, heavy with silence. The key inside was larger than the one from the trunk, old, rusted at the teeth, with a faint floral engraving at the bow. It didn't match any lock we knew. And the note. You've opened the first door. Now decide if you're ready for the second. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Carly. We sat up in the back office, sipping 2 strong coffee and going over everything. The letters, the brooch, the missing necklace, the videos, the woman with no name. And the journal. Always the journal. We brought it back out just after 3 a.m. when the air felt too heavy to pretend anymore. I flipped to the middle, searching for something, anything about a second key, a second place. And then, tucked halfway down a page we'd skimmed too fast before, we found it. A single line written smaller than the rest. If you're reading this, you've found the first. The second lies behind the house that no longer belongs to us. We read it again. And again. The second lies behind the house that no longer belongs to us. What house? Carly asked. I stared at the words. Then whispered, not our house, not the boutique, the lake house. Her eyes widened. But there's nothing behind it, just trees and water. I nodded. In a path. We drove out the next morning. The lake house owners, Dean and Lucinda, were kind like before. Lucinda made tea. Dean insisted on giving us space. I don't know what your grandmother left behind, he said, handing us the spare key. But if it's anything like the stories this place holds, you're braver than most for coming back. We followed the old trail that looped behind the dock, the one Carly and I used to run down as kids, racing to beat the dragonflies before they dipped into the reeds. Only this time we weren't looking for insects. We were looking for something hidden. Something forgotten. The path forked just past the split pine where the bark looked like a broken wishbone. To the left was the boathouse. To the right, Overgrown weeds. Brambles. A path no one had walked in years. We chose right. 15 minutes in, we found it. A gate. Iron covered in ivy, padlocked. Beyond it, a stone cottage, small, crumbling, a house behind the house. It looked abandoned, but the air around it felt charged, like something was holding its breath. Carly pulled the key from the velvet pouch. It slid in perfectly. The gate creaked open like it had been waiting. Inside, the cottage was dust and silence. No electricity, just sunlight filtering through stained windows and the smell of old cedar and lavender. And there, in the center of the floor, stood a pedestal, carved from marble. Atop it, a box, not cedar, not oak, metal, engraved with initials. A.R. Z.R. I stared. My name. Carly's. Before I could speak, Carly stepped forward. She touched the lid. It opened with a whisper. Inside, photos, letters, clippings, a sealed folder marked Redmond Crane Settlement Private. And beneath it all, a tape recorder. Carly picked it up with trembling hands. On the back, a label. For my girls. We brought it home. Back to the boutique. We closed early. Locked the door. Dimmed the lights. And played the tape. Grandma's voice crackled to life, softer than I remembered, but sure. If you found this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. Or maybe I knew you needed to finish it yourselves. There are things I never told you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was afraid the truth would make you question whether you belonged to this family at all. The tape hissed softly. The jewelry, the house, the heirlooms, none of it matters without understanding why they exist. My mother, your great-grandmother, was not just a collector, she was a protector. Of women. Of secrets. Of choices we weren't allowed to make in the open. Her voice cracked, then steadied. That house behind the house, it was a refuge, a place where women who needed to disappear could stay, recover, rewrite. They left items behind, jewelry, notes, pieces of themselves. We kept them, guarded them, because every object told a story the world tried to erase. I looked at Carly, she was crying silently now, hands pressed over her mouth. Isla tried to burn it. Martin tried to sell it. Olivia pretended not to see it. But I trusted you. Both of you. I know one of you stumbled. And one of you carried the grief. But together, you are the only ones who can carry this forward. The tape clicked softly. And then silence. No goodbye. Just trust. We opened the sealed folder. Inside, a signed settlement. Grandma had received a lump sum from the Redmond estate to quietly relinquish claims over certain properties, but she never cashed the check. Instead, she used the funds anonymously to buy the boutique's first building, to set up a scholarship, to restore the cottage. There were ledgers, receipts, letters from women she'd helped anonymously, including one from Isla begging forgiveness. Carly folded that one carefully, tucked it into her wallet. She was trying, she whispered. That night, we returned to the boutique and rearranged the return case. We added a small placard. Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you protect for others to find. And beside it, we placed the tape recorder. The next morning, the boutique was fuller than ever. But the silence between Carly and me, it was gone. We had heard the truth. And it didn't undo us. It made us more complete. Not because it filled the holes, but because it made us stop pretending they weren't there. The truth didn't heal us. It didn't absolve. It clarified. And clarity, painful, sharp-edged clarity, has its own kind of mercy. After the tape, things changed. Customers still came. The boutique still buzzed. Carly's second skin line became more than jewelry, it became a movement. People wrote in from out of state, mailing broken watches and bent rings with handwritten letters asking, "Can you make this into something I can wear again without crying?" She always did. Every piece was returned with a small velvet card that simply said, "There's no shame in surviving." But behind the glass, behind the warmth and antique lace, we knew something darker was still watching. The woman with no face never returned. But the envelope did. This time in black. Inside, a photo of the cottage. Its windows shattered. Its lock broken. And a handwritten note. They found it. No signature, no warning. Just that. I showed it to Carly in silence. She sat down slowly, like her knees had buckled without moving. I thought we had more time, she said. I didn't answer. Because I had thought that too. We returned to the lake house the next day. Dean and Lucinda hadn't been home, the front door was still locked. But the forest behind the house. It told a different story. The iron gate lay twisted on the ground. The door to the cottage swung open, hinges cracked, one panel dangling like a torn wing. Inside, the pedestal was smashed. The metal box. Gone. All that remained was a torn page from Grandma's journal, stuck to the far wall by a rusted letter opener. The page read, "If they come for this place, do not run, reclaim, rebuild, remain." I knelt on the broken tile floor. Tears fell not from fear but from rage. This was sacred, I whispered. Carly stood beside me, fists clenched. We fight back, she said. And for the first time, I saw her not just as my sister, but as someone who had been forged. Back at the boutique, we locked the doors, turned the lights down, brought out every single return, every heirloom, every melted piece, every note, letter, and photograph we'd preserved. We gathered them all, and Carly began designing. Not jewelry, not displays, but armor. The next few weeks became a storm of quiet fury. We contacted every buyer who had returned something, invited them to a private exhibition called The Reckoning in Velvet and Gold. We didn't advertise it. No press. No website. Just handwritten invitations. Every guest was someone who had returned a piece, or written to us, or helped rebuild the story. That night the boutique was candlelit and silent. Dozens came. Many wept. Carly unveiled her newest creation. A sculpture 6 feet tall. Constructed entirely from reclaimed heirlooms. Rings, brooches, necklaces, watches, melted, fused, shaped into a phoenix with outstretched wings and a chest embedded with Grandma's ruby necklace. At its base, carved in gold, "Legacy is a fire that remembers how to rise." No one spoke. Not at first. Then one woman stepped forward and placed her grandmother's locket, something we hadn't seen in over a year, into the palm of the sculpture's outstretched wing. A second woman followed. Then a third. By the end of the night, the phoenix had grown by 20 pieces. Each one whispered, "I returned, I remember, I'm still here." But not everyone celebrated. 3 days later, the boutique was vandalized. Not spray paint. Not broken glass. But silence. The return case was emptied. The sculpture untouched. But left behind, a single velvet glove pinned to the wall with a brooch. Carly stared at it. "That Ilo," she said. My chest tightened. "But she's gone." "She's not." We didn't sleep that night. Instead, we wrote one final letter. Not a reply. An invitation. We addressed it to no one, but we knew it would find her. Inside. "If this ends, it ends with light. We will not hide. Come to the boutique. You want your reckoning. We're ready." 2 nights later, she came. Not Isla, but Olivia. In a cream coat, no jewelry, just tired eyes and a tired voice. "I warned you," she said. "They're not just watching, they're circling." Carly stood in front of the sculpture. "So let them." "I tried to protect the estate," Olivia said, "but I didn't know what she'd left behind. I didn't know about the women, the box, the covenant." She looked at us then. Really looked. "You brought it back to life, and now it's your problem." "Then step aside," I told her. "We don't need your permission." She smiled almost sadly. "No, but you'll need your strength." Then she pulled something from her coat. A black notebook. Inside, the names of every person who had purchased a Redmond heirloom on the black market. Including Martin. Including Isla. Including 3 women in Savannah, 2 in Atlanta, and a silent buyer known only as velour. She set it down. I'm not your enemy, but they are. Then she left. And we were alone again. But this time not afraid. We had names. We had records. We had a sculpture built of survival. The boutique remains open. The return case is fuller than ever. But the phoenix, it now sits in the window. Permanent. A beacon. Not to show what we have, but what we will not lose again. Because reckoning isn't about vengeance. It's about memory. About power reclaimed. And a promise that what we protect, we do so in velvet and in gold.